It's time to sit down and relax for the good, the bad, and the sequel Q&A with your host, Doug.
Hey there, Doug here. So next week we're discussing Friday the 13th Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan. So that means this week we are interviewing someone from the movie, and that someone is actor and Jason victim Michael Benyaer, who played gang member Jojo in the film. Michael has had quite the career so far, from being a celeb in his own high school after appearing on 21 Jump Street, being the voice of Haji on the Johnny Quest reboot where he got to work with the great George Segal, working on a pilot with another great person, Henry Winkler. And that's just a little taste of what you're going to hear. And oh yeah, he is on the new season of The Expanse, which is on Amazon Prime, and that comes out on Friday the 13th. So let's get right to it. My conversation with Michael Benyaer. Awesome, man. Well, thanks so much for taking the time. I do appreciate it.
Of course.
Yeah. So what I like to do with these, as you heard with the Jerry one, is really just finding out, how folks started in their career, but really where they grew up and what inspired them. So just like any good movie, it has a great story. So where's your story begin? Where'd you grow up?
A lot of movies begin with flashbacks.
They do.
Some movies begin in the present tense. I don't know, the action sequence.
Yeah.
I fought my way out of the womb.
Yes.
I born in Vancouver, Canada, and I'd wanted to be an actor since I was a young kid. And I used to do, voices. I'm an only child and stuff like that. And when I was in high school, they started filming a lot of TV shows in Vancouver.
Yeah.
And one of the first shows was a show called 21 Jump Street, and they did the pilot in my high school. And I was an extra, and I was like, I could do this. I think I could do this. And then somehow we got an agent, and then I saw a script for the first time. I think it was for a 21 Jump Street, and I was like, that's all they do? Like, I thought they wrote every single thing, like, Dave enters and there is a TV on the nightstand and a glass of water. Like, I was like, it just says Dave enters this classroom. I'm like, well, that's not hard. I could do that. And then he says this and this. So me and my friends, we were like, we can do this. So I remember I got an agent very quickly because I had a friend who had an agent, and then they had scripts that were being, cast. And I remember getting the first feature film script in my hands, and I said, can I borrow this? And they said, yes. And it was Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. And I brought it to class with my good friend at the time, Eric Drysdale, who was one of my writing partners, and we were doing things. And we both kind of passed it back and forth in the social studies class. And we couldn't believe that this is amazing. Like, this is how, And then we'd seen the movie before the movie came out. We're like, this is the best business ever. So I started acting, and my first part was on 21 Jump Street, and I played like just a teenager in a classroom. And then my second audition was for a cartoon. They were starting to do voiceover in Canada, and it was for Barbie and the Rockers. And it was a cartoon based on Barbie and Ken, and I was cast as the voice of Ken. And at the time, I really wanted to, show my range, and I could do this reporter and that reporter and all the accents. And the casting woman from the U.S., a woman named Marcia Goodman was her name, at Deke, she said, just do your own voice, honey. Just do your own voice. And I was like, but I can do all the things. She's like, just do it. In the end, I was cast as the voice of Ken, and I got a lot of notoriety in Canada. They thought it was really funny that a young Canadian guy was cast as the all-American voice. And I got a lot of press from that. And then I did some other TV, and then about a year or so later, right out of high school, I wrote for TV with my two friends, Eric and this other guy, Ori Kowarski. And we got writing jobs on a late night TV show for CBC, which is a network in Canada, called Pilot One. And then I was like, wow, I can do all these things that I set my mind to, And then the show was canceled after a few months because there was a strike at the network with one of the production crews. And I was like, this is crazy. And I went to school for other things, and I continued to act while I was in college and university. And I remember I was in a Friday the 13th movie, and then I started doing a lot of cartoons. And maybe that's why you called me about the Friday the 13th. That's why you contacted me, was that movie. It was in 89, right?
Yeah. Well, for other things too, there's a lot of one thing that before we get into Friday the 13th, I think it might have been, again, IMDb is never right, but the second show they have you is a show that some guy turned me on to it like 15 years ago and I loved it, was Wise Guy.
Yes, I was in that. That was in high school as well.
Was that filmed in Vancouver too?
Yes, it was. Yes.
Okay, cool.
Two productions that seemed to be in New York, and they were cast in Vancouver. And I guess I looked the most New York of the Vancouver kids because of my swarthy complexion. So in Friday the 13th, I'm a Puerto Rican supposedly, and in I think I'm supposed to be Puerto Rican in 21 Jump Street too, or Italian. What was my name? Dino. There you go. I'm looking right at Dino. I'm looking at Dino. You're reminding me of it seems like people are like, how do you have this recollection of these things so long ago? It's just because they were such, out of the ordinary events. They were big events in your life, of getting cast in a movie or auditioning for these things. And I remember auditioning for Wise Guy. I was still in high school, and I had already had the success of being on 21 Jump Street. And the next day in school, every kid, like literally, it was out of the movies where you walk down the hallway and they'd all look at you and be like, point at you like you were on TV the night before, because there was a show that kids watched.
Yeah.
No, but there were maybe 3 or 4 networks at the time. I think Fox was the 4th network, and it was a brand new thing, but it was a show that every kid in my school watched because it was filmed in Vancouver and we were teenagers. We were the demo. So I literally remember walking down the hall from, outside into the school, and every head turned at me and kind of whispered, he was on TV last night. And I was like, this is crazy. Like, I'm actually being like somewhat famous for having like 5 lines on TV, and you just reminded me. And I got a call that weekend from LA from this girl who had been sitting in the class because she was visiting her cousin in Vancouver. And then I was like, who is this? And she's like, my mom said, you have a phone call? It was like 11 o'clock on a Sunday night. She goes, and I said, I was in the class and you're friends with so-and-so. I said, yeah. And she goes, she wants to know this. And I said, who? And it was, she says her friend's name was Saskia Sassoon. And I said, like Vidal Sassoon, like jokingly. She goes, yeah, that's her dad. And I went, what? And I was like, I was like, that's the power of TV, that Vidal Sassoon's daughter wanted to talk to me because I was on TV for like a minute.
Yeah.
So that was my early exposure. So then I got this part on 21 Jump Street, and then I did Wise Guy. And I remembered I was so keen to do this stuff that the role that I did on Wise Guy was part of a duo of 2 young guys who run into the lead on the show on the street. And when I went to the audition, I had prepared both sides. I had been auditioning for one character, and they said, do you want to try the other character? And I said, sure. So I did both characters memorized. And I think they were so impressed, I did it multiple times with different pairings of actors, that I ended up booking one of the parts. So it showed me that preparation was respected in acting. And I remember my line, you're just making me laugh, Wise Guy, I haven't talked about this in years. Hey, Mr. Terranova, there's a rumor all over the neighborhood that you flew in on a private chopper, right? And then he kind of talks to us and kind of plays down the fact of organized crime, like, don't believe the hype or whatever. So yeah, so I filmed that, and the other guy with me was a guy named Bernie Colson, who just at that point had just shot a lead role in a movie called The Accused with Jodie Foster and Kelly McGillis. So that was his the moment before he became a bit of a name actor. He became successful after that.
It's so crazy, like you said, that long ago. You remember that, and I think that show is, I don't know if you've watched it in years or if it was even big at the time, but man, that show it's really good. That first season, Ray Sharkey is so good.
It was good, and it was critically acclaimed at the time. And it was interesting because I was still in high school when it aired, but the response in the hallways after the 21 Jump Street was not as great on that one as it was for 21, because it wasn't aimed at young people. It just showed me that you could be on something. It just depends on who's watching it, so it was interesting.
So right after that, then we'll talk about Jason. Were you a fan of Friday the 13th at all before this audition?
Not at all.
Not at all. And how'd that come about? Was it the same thing? Like somebody saw you, or is it like an open cattle call?
No, I had an agent at that point, and this is a good story, and it's good that you're interested in the movie.
Yeah.
So as you can see, I mean, you've seen me in the film. I mean, I don't know if you've seen me today. I don't look like that anymore.
No, you don't.
But at the time, I had my first job, I had kind of shorter hair that was growing out, and then I just kind of kept growing my hair out. So by the time I was in, was it Wise Guy? Yeah, I had longer hair, and then I had long hair. I looked very striking, like very memorable. I had very long hair and dark complexion. So I looked maybe East Indian or Latino or American Indian. And I had done a TV pilot for CBS in '87 playing, it's right on here, Ike Tench, there you go, playing American Indian. And that was a big part for me. And I was like, this is where my career is going to go. I'm going to do these parts. So I didn't cut my hair. So I became kind of known as, one of the guys in town there that was doing kind of the juvenile delinquent role. I look like a juvenile delinquent, even though I'm, the straightest living, guy in the, didn't drink, didn't smoke, nothing. I looked like a heavy metal kind of guy.
Yeah.
So I was writing for this TV show, and then one of the other actors in the show, a guy named Martin Cummins, was auditioning for Jason Takes Manhattan. At the time, it was called Ashes to Ashes, and I found the script recently. And if everybody wants to go on my Instagram after this, I will place the title page. And I remember clearly that they didn't reveal that it was a Friday the 13th movie, and that all references to Jason in the script were named Ethan.
Whoa.
Okay. Yeah. So they didn't want us to know that it was a Friday the 13th movie. And I auditioned to play one of these two gang members. And then when I got the film, they revealed that it was a Friday the 13th. I was like, oh, that's funny. That's the guy with the hockey mask. I knew that. and then they explained to me that it was not wanted to be revealed, since the show was, so cult popular, that some kind of occultist would come to the set and like steal things, or they were afraid of things like that. They just didn't want the word to get out. And so the thing was that Martin was cast in the movie, and he played the guy, the video camera guy with the glasses.
Yeah.
Okay. So he was one of the hosts of the show that I was writing for, and I was writing for the show. So I think the show was on strike at that moment, so that he could do it. They let him out, and then there was a whole argument whether I could go. It was only a couple of days of filming, and I'm like, well, we're not even in production now. Like, I'm not breaking any contract. And they're like, well, so it was 2 nights, I remember. And the nights that I filmed, it was in downtown Vancouver, and they gave me cornrows for my hair, but which we're not seeing because they gave me a bandana as well.
Yeah.
But they asked me to not take the cornrows out after the first night. So I had to keep the hair for 2 days. And then also, I remember it was a night shoot, as you could see. And this is exactly the night it was, that Rob Lowe was singing with Snow White on the Academy Awards. And I was watching it in my trailer on a small black and white TV. I remember missing. And that was the night. If you remember when Rob Lowe, you might be too young, but he sang with Snow White. And it's like very, infamous. And that was the night that I was filming that.
I wonder why. So they said, hey, you got to get cornrows. And then after the fact, they have you wear a bandana.
Well, the cornrows, you could see it through the kind of the bottom of the, but it's so dark, you can't tell.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's a few shots of me in the movie that, but I guess for, verisimilitude, for reality, so it worked. I definitely felt like a different person. I still clearly remember showering and trying to not, ruin the cornrows that they had done.
Yeah.
And that was like 2 days in a row there. That's so funny.
And then you shot him up, and then he slammed your head into a pipe repeatedly, and then you died. Yes.
And then, I have to, view it again. I put it on the Instagram as a joke on the 13th this year, and that's how you contacted me. But I remember the guy who directed the movie also wrote it. and Rob Hedden was his name. And I remember saying, why would I go closer to him if he's not, going down from bullets, right? And he was like, just do it. I'm like, okay. I guess it looks better in the movie where I go so he can grab me, I guess. But at the time I was like, like in reality, if someone isn't going down from like 4 or 5 bullets, I think you'd run away.
Yeah, well, that's most hard. That's a whole trope of all horror movies. They do that so many times.
Yeah.
You have a gun and you're getting closer and closer.
Oh, so that's in other horror films? Okay.
The same kind of thing, yeah.
Stupid.
Oh, yeah. And then even like Wes Craven, who's like the king of horror movies, even in the movie Scream, the original, he kind of like mocked it when she's on the phone to Nev Campbell and she says, oh, you know what? Why are girls so dumb? And they run upstairs and then the guy shows up and instead of running out the front door, she runs upstairs. But that's really cool. Yeah. You had an experience on a movie like that. And then like looking back at that movie, I know you're only there for a few days. Was it like a hectic you?
No.
Okay.
No, I mean, and I feel like I did this interview recently, but it wasn't with you, somebody else. But it was like, I was a kid. I mean, I was 18 or 19 and, you're just excited to be there with other young actors. Oh, and so the guy who played my quote partner is a guy named Sam Sarkar, who was my friend at the time. And he was a few years older than me. Oh yeah. Yeah. And he was a few years older than me. And his start was interesting. He was the stand-in on 21 Jump Street for the Asian actor, Dustin Nguyen. So he was kind of in, and he was cool, an older guy I was hanging out with in Vancouver. And then he was also interested in screenwriting and other things like that. And he got a big TV series after that in Canada called Neon Rider, where he played the ranch hand on the show. And then he moved to California because he was connected with Johnny Depp. And then he is now, the last several years, maybe 10 years, he is the development executive at Johnny Depp's production company called Infinitum Nil.
Oh, wow.
So it just shows that once you get in a certain way, if you stay with it, you can succeed. So he's not really acting anymore at all, but he's still very in powerful position.
Yeah, there's a lot of people in that movie. When I send these emails out, we reach out to folks. It's like pretty much on the earlier end, given a couple of the older actors in the movie, but it's a lot of like younger green actors, like it's their first or second movie.
Sure, and I have done other interviews about this, so now I realize it wasn't you. Yeah. But I mean, Martin and I were good friends at the time, Martin Cummins, and then Kelly Hugh was in it, and she was brought up from LA, and she was, I think, like a Miss Hawaii or something like that. I don't remember what she was, but that was one of her first things. And since then she became a big star. I mean, that was one of her first movies. Oh
yeah, we're covering a movie that she's doing this coming week. She's an X2 X-Men United. She's one of the main actresses in that. But yeah, so then right after that, you did the Ken voice.
Yeah, that was before that. That's
what I mean. Yeah, but I'm saying right after that, you did a lot of big voices in some big shows.
Yeah. I did G.I. Joe. And that was the last season of the original incarnation of G.I. Joe.
Yeah.
And because they were doing it in Canada to save money, they brought up a very famous voice actor who was originally Canadian to match a lot of the classic voices so that they would kind of qualify as a Canadian production in some way. A guy named Maurice LaMarche. He was matching, Destro and Cobra Commander. And I was sitting there like watching him do all these voices in a row, talking to himself. And I was like, this is crazy. Not knowing that was very, very rare to see that. So I did that. I'm looking right now. I did.
And what's really cool is down the road, you had a small role in the G.I. Joe live action film, The Rise of Cobra.
That is correct.
Did they know about it?
I mentioned it in the meeting, and,
cool.
And then I think that's what got me in the movie. Yeah.
So the reason I asked that, because I think it's so cool when those things come full circle. I interviewed an actor. His name is George Buza. He lives in Canada now, but he's from the States. He was the voice of Beast on X-Men, the animated series. And he auditioned for like a small role in the first X-Men movie. And while he's doing his audition, Bryan Singer's talking to him, the director, and some guy whispers in his ears. He's like, this is the guy that voiced Beast.
So they gave him the part as like almost like he said everything changed right after that because they were like kind of like kissing his feet, like, oh, thank you for the work you did as Beast. So they gave him like a small role as like a truck driver who drops off Wolverine in the beginning of the movie. But no, that's so cool that you had that opportunity to be in it.
I think a lot of actors would not be as bold as me to mention it in the meeting. like you're saying, people wouldn't know. Like they don't know that I've done the voice. I was out at we were screening a TV show the other night. I was at a party. A girl had a guest star on a TV show, and we were there for about an hour and stuff. And then finally she goes, Michael was the voice of Reboot. And the one guy goes, what? And then another guy goes, I don't know that one. Then he goes, Johnny Quest. He goes, Johnny Quest, what? And so unless you tell somebody, they don't know. Like I can walk around anonymously. Had any of these shows that I've done been on camera, I think it would be a little different career, but the anonymity is completely there until you tell somebody.
Yeah. Have you ever done
I was doing a lot of,
Oh no, I was gonna say, have you done any Comic Cons for like your voices?
I've done a few in Canada. The cartoon I did, Reboot, which I was the lead on, was very big in Canada. It was big in the US, but in Canada it aired 3 times a day for about 10 years on YTV. Wow. So it was very big. So in Canada I can do conventions and sell lots of autographs and books. But Johnny Quest, the remake of it never really took off in the US, I don't think. But Exo Squad, I'm looking right here, didn't really take off.
But Johnny Quest is cool. That's when it was that's when they were rebranding it and they put it on TNT.
Yes, correct. Right.
I remember going to Pizza Hut and getting the toy of Johnny Quest and Haji. So your voice, I had that toy as a kid.
Right, that's right.
So cool. So let's see what else I wrote. I was looking through IMDb and it was like mind blowing. All these shows and video games that you did voices on that I watched growing up. So is there a particular one that, so like you said, Reboot was on, it's on for 10 years on 3 times a day. What's it like, flipping through the channels and you just hear yourself?
I would turn it off. I was like, it's like when you used to hear your voice on an answering machine. You didn't want to hear your own voice.
That's true. Yeah.
I would turn it off. And, they had done 2 seasons and it took so long to do since it was CGI. And then they did a 3rd season and no one contacted me that they had replaced me for the 3rd season. And I was very insulted by that. I was like, you could at least let me know.
Yeah.
So I had a little bad taste in my mouth and I was like, it was like a breakup, like a girl you didn't want to like talk about or deal with, and then, miraculously after that, they called me back to be in further seasons as the same character and the other guy was still there. So it was a weird kind of rapprochement, ending. So I have a better feeling about it now, but for that time I was like, I don't care. So.
Yeah. And then, so you did so many voices on so many like big time video games. And then you had guest roles on TV shows and then you land a role on Days of Our Lives.
Well, you're missing many years here.
I know that.
I was going well, but I was not getting to the next level that I'd hoped I would in California.
Yeah.
So I said, screw this, and I'm going to go to grad school. So I went to grad school for film, and then that ended, and I was like, screw this, I'm going to real school. So I went to law school. I went back to Canada to law school.
Whoa.
And I did that, and my career basically took off again after 9/11 happened. Because my parents are from Israel via Morocco, and I look, I guess, Middle Eastern, and that qualifies me in some sort of way to play Middle Eastern parts.
Yeah.
Then I came back to California, and my career had taken a different direction. I was doing a lot of those kind of parts. And then, Days of Our Lives was an audition for a few episodes, and I went in and I played the character of Dr. Chaika. And they liked what I did, and they kept writing me into Dr. Chaika into Days of Our Lives. I think I did 40 episodes altogether.
Yeah, that's amazing. What is it like shooting those? Is it kind of different because there's so many episodes?
That is the hardest acting that there is, in my opinion. I tip my hat to all the soap actors now that I know what it is. They do sometimes, 60 pages a day on average, and they do 1 take on average.
What?
And I couldn't understand that at first. And I said, how does that work? They go, well, sometimes we film the rehearsal. they're basically, it's like a play. You're doing a play. Unless you really screw something up, they're not doing the take again. So I learned to be very prepared, and that was it. One take on average, and it was. I think they were banking the episodes 3 or 4 months in advance.
Wow. Yeah, I know. I interviewed a guy. I don't know if you worked with him. He was on that show, but I don't know if you guys crossed paths. But Sean Kanan, and he was telling me about that the same kind of thing. Like it was like really you had to be on, but he did like the times that he was off because I think they had like summers off or like big breaks or holidays. But that's pressure, man, to try to have to be on one take.
Yeah. And I mean, the people that are under contract, longer, bigger parts, they will kind of paraphrase the lines. And they're not going off book entirely, but they're not doing it exact. So when I first started acting with this famous actress, she was doing the gist of what the lines were. But no one had warned me this. So I'm like, what? Like, this is not the lines. Okay, so, and then I'm like, maybe you can even see it on the footage of me. I'm like, well, this is not what's happening, And then we went through it. I'm like, well, I didn't say the thing, but they go, it's okay. That's fine. Moving on. I was like, okay. So it's a real different experience than doing a lot of film and TV where there's multiple camera angles and different setups and it takes a long time. It's done like that. Yeah.
So over the years and all the guest roles that you did, is there a particular one that you enjoyed the most? Like that you were able to, you feel like your acting chops you were able to put out there, like a live action role?
Yes, but it's not always the ones that people know or see.
Oh, I'm sure.
I mean, as as you're talking to me the last few minutes, I think I have a pretty good sense of humor. I want to, I'm a more comedic person than they have me playing a lot of things on camera. And there was a sitcom pilot I did with Heather Graham, and it was called Emily's Reasons Why Not. It's on here. It was around 2004, 2005. I was cast in the pilot as the boyfriend of her gay best friend in the show. And they had me do kind of a vague accent. And when the show was picked up, they kept writing me in and coming back and back. And then one of the first days back when it was picked up the series, I had this scene where I was teaching yoga in the sitcom. And I started doing things, and the creator, she's a big showrunner now, a woman named Emily Kapnick, said to me, yeah, we'd love what you're doing. Just keep doing it. And I'm like, what? She goes, do whatever you're doing is working. And I was saying things that I was improvising, and I was like, coming up with expressions like, great. And I'm like, this is a dream come true. Like I'm creating my own, sitcom character. Like they're letting me do it. I just couldn't believe it. And I remember calling my manager at the time, and he goes, really? I said, I'm not kidding. This is happening. And he goes, wow, this is great. And then that show was canceled after one night.
Oh.
So like no one really saw that scene. It's on my demo reel because I got the footage, but no one ever saw the show. So it just shows sometimes you don't know, and some things that you don't think are going to be much. I'm just looking through here, like, I had a part in Deadpool. Like, I said, well, I'd like to be in the movie, and they did some reshoots, and I got in that scene. I didn't know if I thought the scene was going to be with Ryan Reynolds. I didn't know it was going to be with the villain there, Ed Skrein.
Yeah.
So, and I didn't know it'd be so early in the movie. So I get to the set. I'm there for a few hours, and I almost couldn't do it because I had booked another part on a live action show in Toronto called Beauty and the Beast, and the live action role was going to pay me more money than the one day on the movie. And I said to my agent, I think something might happen with this Deadpool movie. And she's like, really? And I said, I don't know. He's funny. I think something could happen with this. Like they didn't expect a lot. It was shot in Vancouver, the movie. And I said, I'd like to be able to do both. So I filmed for about 5 or 6 hours in Vancouver. And I got on a flight that night to Toronto to film the other show. And, and about 4 or 5 months later, the movie came out, and it was a phenomenal success. And it's probably the biggest thing that I've been in since. But you never know. You just never know.
Yeah. Has Vancouver always been like a hotbed for filming? Like here in the States? And as you know, it's like it bounces around. Like right now, people are filming in Georgia. Man.
Yes. Since the 87, since I started on 21 Jump Street. Yeah. I think they did a couple of the X-Men movies. I'm sure you could, the X-Files show was shot there.
Yeah.
A lot of things. Yeah.
I know right now, like Hallmark, it has like a big thing there. I interviewed this guy, Jerry Wasserman, who was also on Wise Guy, but like a couple seasons afterwards. Yeah.
Jerry Wasserman is an expat American who moved there. I think he's a professor at UBC.
He is,
I remember him on a show in '87 called Beans Baxter.
Yes.
And
you would know that because you.
I was there. Yeah.
That's so great. And so George Buza, you might know because he was in.
Sure. He was on Canadian shows. I recognize him. He's got a big guy, bald guy with looks like kind of like a Sasquatch kind of guy.
Yeah, he was in a show about like a weird family. I can't remember the name of it right now.
But... Yes, the Monster Family. Yes.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Jerry Wasserman is a really cool guy. But so you've been doing this such a long time. Is there a particular role that now in your point in your career that you'd love to be able to do, or character that you could voice or play?
Well, I mean, I'd like to, in voiceover, I'd like to be able to play a lot of things. I remember when I was doing reboots, there was a moment there, it was maybe a year later, that Saban Entertainment was going to do, and they did do it, which was called Spider-Man Unlimited. And it was down to me and another guy to be the voice of Spider-Man.
Oh, wow.
And it was, they needed a Canadian actor for tax reasons. Again, I was in LA and they were like, because you're Canadian here, we can do it here. And I didn't get it, but that was a childhood dream. That would have been a good one. But, on camera, it's different because you got to look like, what people envision. I've just done something I'm really excited about. I can't even reveal to you the character yet because it's not coming out till December. But I have a recurring role on a show called The Expanse, which is now on Amazon on camera.
Oh, cool.
And that's a good part. But I think the best is yet to come. I don't know what role I will play that will be the one that I will be known for. I think it's not happened yet. I think I've done. It's funny because someone like yourself, you're younger than me, you grew up with the stuff. I think it's like I go to read for something and then they'll kind of Google me and they go, "Oh, you were this guy and you were this guy and this guy." Like it's not built to a culmination where people know it when I walk in the room. Yeah. Only when they go, "Oh my God, yeah," So it just takes 2 or 3 things in a row for people to finally go, "Who is that guy?" So. Hopefully that will happen soon. And I think it really will happen in the sense that someone who's in the creative power position like yourself will say, "Got to give it to this guy." They go, "Why?" I go, "Well, he was that guy. Right. And they're like, "Oh, right." Because sometimes they don't get it until after I'm there. I remember doing a movie. It was with, Joe Mantegna, and it was a movie called Underworld. Not the Lycan movie, but it was a mob movie with Joe Mantegna and Dennis Leary. And I had a scene with Joe Mantegna and Dennis Leary, and it took about 5 or 6 days to shoot the one scene because we were in a limousine and they had to do different versions of it where we were in the actual limousine and then they had half of it cut on a set and all this kind of stuff. So I got to know Joe Mantegna pretty well for this week. We were just sitting across from each other. And somehow I said, when he goes, "So what do you do?" And I said this and that. And he goes, "You do voices?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm doing this cartoon. I do this sort called Reboot." And he goes, "Reboot? What do you do on Reboot?" And I said, "You know Reboot?" And he goes, "Yeah, I know Reboot. Who are you on Reboot?" And I said, "I do a character named Bob." "You're Bob on Reboot." And I was like, "Yes." He goes, "I have a daughter. She's like 5 years old. She's autistic. And she'd been talking about reboots for months. And one day when I came downstairs on a Saturday morning, she pointed at the TV, Reboot." And he goes, "Wait till I tell my wife I met Bob from Reboot." So you never know. You just never know, right? What someone is a fan of, like this and that. So, that's why I just keep doing it. And I hope that it will just keep me in the game here. Sometimes it's a good year. Sometimes it's a bad year, but I'm still in the game.
But that's pretty cool that you have a guy that you're sitting across, and not saying you're like fawning over, because you're a professional, even though that was early in your career. It's not like you're fawning over like the stars of a movie, but for him to say that, I don't know, I would have lost.
No, it was lovely. I mean,
that's cool.
But you have to remember that a lot of these people didn't make it out of the gate right away. They had years of being the guy in that thing, So they're like, you're right that, I've told this story years ago. I've not told this story for years. I'll tell it to you.
All right.
So when I was doing Johnny Quest, the stars of the show were a guy named J.D. Roth, who played Johnny Quest, and he's now a huge game show producer, like reality show producer. Okay, he did not stay with acting; he got very smart. A guy named Robert Patrick, who you know as the Terminator 1000, was Race Bannon. Okay, and an actor named George Siegel was Dr. Siegel. Okay, so this is in 95, 96. Okay, and at the time, it was just post Terminator 2. So Robert was famous, but it had waned a little bit. So when we started the show, he was, talking to me in the studio how they'd asked him to do the Universal Studios ride based on the movies. And he'd done some other things. He was in like Fire in the Sky and all that. He was getting, respect as an actor, but he was still known as the Terminator guy, the T-1000. He's like, they're doing this ride at Universal and Arnie's going to do it and Linda's going to do it and the kid's going to do it. You think I should do it? And I was like, yes, I do think you should do it. Right. And he's like, why? I go, because that's how you're known. You're not like the only one who's going to show up for it. They're all doing it. You're going to do it. You give a thank you to Jim Cameron and the whole thing. And of course he did do it in the end, but also with George Siegel.
He's awesome.
Okay. So George Siegel had been a huge movie star for the listeners out there in the late 60s, early 70s. Okay. So every week we would do 2 episodes and we'd break for lunch for about 2 or 3 hours. And we'd all go en masse to have lunch at this restaurant up the street from Hanna-Barbera called the Hollywood Canteen. And I would sit with George Siegel and Robert Patrick and the director, Chris Zimmerman, and maybe the producer, Peter Lawrence, or some guest stars sometimes. And Frank Welker, who is the top voice guy in the world, who played the voice of the dog on the show and every other guest star. Okay. So, and by the way, he was a master class watching him. So one week I'm I'm a young actor. I'm 24, 25 years old, trying to get a decent agent. And I'm kind of in between and, and I'm asking, George Siegel's advice, and they would give me advice. And one day George Siegel says to me, I said, George, do you think I'll make it? And he goes, let me tell you a story. I said, okay. He goes, about 30 years ago. And this was in the 80s, he was saying, okay, I was walking in Beverly Hills and a young man ran up to me and said, Mr. Siegel, I want to be an actor. Do you have any advice for me? And I said to him, yes, just stick with it. Now, I went along my day, never saw him again. A couple of years ago, I'm at a party in Hollywood and an actor comes up to me and says, Mr. Siegel, I want to thank you for your advice those many years ago on the street in Beverly Hills. What you said gave me the hope, and I went on, and here I am today. Michael. Now, do you know who that actor was? I said, no, sir. He goes, it was John Lovitz. Now, did I think that a fat, pimply-faced teenager in Beverly Hills was going to be an actor? No. But he stuck with it, and he made it. So you're asking me if you're going to make it. He goes, you're already on the ladder. You're doing it right now. And when the time comes for the role with an actor with Valentino eyes, you got the part. So I'm still waiting for that role with the Valentino eyes that George Siegel predicted to me.
God, what a moment to have in your life. He's so awesome. I loved on the Larry Sanders Show. I've watched that show a million times. I loved his bit on the show that he was like the guy that he was on like every other week and they would like always bump him. And no, he was so cool.
Yeah. And that was the time where he asked me, you can look at the timeline. He goes, they want me to do this movie with Ben Stiller playing the father. What do you think? And I said, yes. This is like in 95, 96. I go, yes. And he goes, and they want me to do another thing. There was 2 things. It was that, and then it was like another cameo. I think it was a Jim Carrey movie. There were 2 things with Ben Stiller. And I said, yes, do that. He goes, you think so? I go, yes. And then a year later, he got Just Shoot Me. But he was like not working that much at the time. That's why he was doing the cartoon.
I love these people confide in you. That's great. You're a very likable guy. That
we're in it together.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, is he listening to me as the end all be all of his advice? No. I'm some 25. He goes, "Well, what?" He goes, "You're young. What do you know about this?" I go, "Yeah, that's Jim Carrey. Yeah, I do it." Really? I'm like, "Yes." I'm sure he's listening to his agents who are telling him to do it, but he's, I'm the one other voice saying, "Yes, he's famous. He's Jim Carrey. It's good."
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, that was the Cable Guy. He played the father.
That was Cable Guy. That's right.
Yeah.
Because Ben Stiller directed the movie as well.
Yeah.
So I said, and I don't think it was a big part in the movie. He goes, I think it's going to be, and Judd Apatow did it too.
Oh.
I mean, he wrote the movie. So you just, you don't know. And they thought that was going to be a big hit, and it was not a big hit. So maybe George could be mad at me for that.
Yeah. He'll find you one day. I think it's pretty cool that obviously he's been doing it for so long, but now hearing that story, how great of a guy he is. But just like on the Goldbergs, how people can see how great his comedy is.
Oh, yeah. And he told me stories. I hope he hears this one day. He told me stories about how he made it, which was he was an actor working. He was not famous. This is in the late 60s. And he was cast in a movie called The Doctors. Would have to double check. The Doctors. And then it was, what's his name, who played Columbo. Peter Falk dropped out at the last minute for some reason. So then they said, "George, you get his part," and they moved him up, and they had to dye his hair to play that role, to darker. And he said to me, "Whatever movie you first are known by the public in, you'll play variations of that for the rest of your life."
I'm looking at the movie right now, Young Doctors with Dick Clark was in it. Ben Gazzara.
Yeah, so what year?
Ben Gazzara.
Ben Gazzara, yeah.
That was 61.
Wow. So he said that was the first movie, and then they dyed his hair. So he had a smaller part, and then they bumped him up.
Wow.
Yeah.
And he's still doing it today.
Yeah, of course.
So what would you say your key to success is? Because you're still doing this after so many years. So many people just drop out because they just can't.
What is my key to success? Well, there's two different things. Am I a success? It depends who you ask. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think my key to success is persistence. Really, I mean, if you just stick with it long enough, and also versatility. If you look at what I've been doing, whether it's voiceover or on camera, and I did some writing as well, and things you don't see here. Like, I did a movie trailer voice one year it was a movie called The Dictator with Sacha Baron Cohen. I did the voice.
Oh, you did that?
Trailer for that. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
So things that keep you in the game, So when there's like dry areas and different things, just versatility. The more plate spinning you can have, I think, will keep you in it.
Oh, that's great advice. Obviously, you started acting young. You're in high school.
Yeah.
21 Jump Street. Everybody fawns over you walking down the hallway. But what was it before that you wanted to do if you didn't catch that acting bug?
What, you're asking before the age of 9? You're saying? No, I wanted to be an actor since a young age.
Yeah. Okay.
No. Yeah. I mean, I remember as a young kid, I was like, could I be a different thing every day of the week? I could be a magician one day. I could be a CHP another day. I'd be a cartoonist. I was like, why do I have to do one thing? And it's funny. I really, one of my heroes as a kid was an actor. And I'm sure you know who he is, Henry Winkler, the Fawn.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I ended up doing an interview. It was when I filmed Wise Guy. And there was a photo of me on in Vancouver magazine, and I had said I want to be like Canada's Henry Winkler, because he had been a producer of MacGyver, which I'd also done. And I ended up doing a sitcom pilot with him about 15 years ago, and I said to him when we met at the table read, I said I wanted to be like you. He's like, really? And I said, yeah. And I showed him the article, and he couldn't believe it. And he kind of took me under his shoulder for the week and hung out with me, and that was a career that I admired because he was very famous as a child, obviously. But that show ran for 10, 12 years, I guess, Happy Days. But what I didn't realize then was that as an actor, he was probably tired of being typecast, that he could do other things.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I think that's a double-edged sword. You want success and recognition and obviously money that goes with it, but then you're literally trapped in this one character, and you're like, I can do other things. And I remember getting the call that I was going to be doing that I had been at the audition, and I called my parents separately, and I said, you'll never believe who was at the audition. And my father said, I don't know the actors' names, Michael. You know the. I said Fonzie, and he goes, Henry Winkler. He knew his name, and I said yes. He goes, there's no way he was auditioning. I said, yeah, he was auditioning. I saw him sitting there. Right? I talked to him for an hour. Are you sure? I'm like, am I sure? I saw him. I talked to him for an hour, and my father couldn't believe he's auditioning. And then I said this to my father. I said, you know the difference between Henry Winkler and me? He goes, no. I go, $30 million. Okay. That's the difference, which is Henry Winkler doesn't need this part. Okay. He doesn't need to act again. Okay. He wants to show that it wasn't a fluke, that he could get another part that is that big or close to that big. And he kept doing it. And finally, 2 years ago, he gets the part, which is on Barry. And he wins the Emmy for that. Okay. But I'm saying that guy had been doing, I did a pilot with him you never heard of. Okay. He'd done a lot of series that you haven't heard of, but he kept doing it, persistence, because he wanted to show that he wasn't a one-trick pony. Okay. And he's an actor and he can do other things. So there you go. Henry Winkler is the example right there.
I've heard. So here's two quick stories about Henry Winkler because it's true. You're going to tell me right now, Tom Hanks. You're going to tell me right now. It's true. No, not that. No. My wife. Okay. We live in New Jersey, and my wife worked for a photographer in New York City for a few months, just like helping out. It was like no pay, but she got to meet Henry Winkler for a photo shoot for a play that he was doing on Broadway. He was like an aging porn star, and he came in dressed like a plumber and like short shorts. But my wife said he was like the nicest guy ever to be able to interact with. And then the other story is there's an actor I interviewed. It's in A Million Things. His name is Jason Kravitz, and he was on a series.
The Practice. I know who you.
Oh, okay, cool. So his first scene he ever shot after he got The Practice was Henry Winkler, was a dentist that was like, it's really creepy, something with like bugs.
Yes, sure. So, I know it. Yeah. It was on Law and Order, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So on that, so after that shoot, he meets him, he talks to him. He's like, this is my first shoot. He helps him out a little bit, tells him like where to look and just gives him some tips. Then like 2 weeks later, he gets an envelope in the mail, and Henry Winkler took photographs of him on set without him knowing, just so he has those mementos, because he never had them when he was on his first days on Happy Days. How amazing is that?
It says who he is.
Yeah.
And we're talking about Henry Winkler, and I don't care. He's a bigger star than me, and I'll give this story. So as I'm there with him for the week, once again, I have this childhood hero of mine that I dreamt of asking these things, when I was a kid. And I won't even go into the backstory of how at the audition, I admitted to him that I had an autobiography of him as a kid, and everybody in the room also kind of chimed in afterwards, like an AA meeting. Yeah, me too. How much they couldn't believe he was sitting there. So he talked about how he first moved to LA and he stayed on, what's his name? Charlie Hade's couch.
Oh, okay.
And he goes, and I got a part on, he said it was Mary Tyler Moore. And he said there was something else. I think it was something else. And he goes, and this and that. And then he got Happy Days. And then, of course, his world changed. And I've read other things about it, which is when you're a TV star, people feel they can approach you. And when you're a movie star, they kind of hold you reverentially. It's different. So what I saw, I'd never seen anything like it. And I've not seen it since. As we were there for the production week, and we were on the lot, and it was a lunchroom. And as we went into the lunchroom, I was walking with him. People approached him, and I have to say this, almost like he was Jesus. Okay. And they came up to him and they said, I love you. I loved you. And he went back, like he said, and I love you. And he would completely churn it back on them immediately. He would not let it sit with him and walk away. He wouldn't say, thank you. He said, I love you. It was like a combine, like a turbine. He would go right back to them. And I noticed it immediately. And I was like, that's how he does this. Otherwise, you would implode from all the adulation. Do you follow what I'm saying?
Yeah,
I've never seen anything like it. I'm not exaggerating it. I think if he walks through a room, he was in everyone's home for 15 years.
Oh, I know.
Okay. Like if you grew up. Okay. So, and he was the coolest guy ever. So it goes on and on. So, I really noticed that he would churn it back to the adulation, and, he appreciated it. That's what I'm saying. He, like you're saying with Kravitz, he understood the moment.
Yeah.
He's like, don't take this for granted, because he had been a struggling actor. So he understood the moment. And that's not surprising to me when you tell me that, but also makes me happy that he hasn't lost that.
Yeah, no, it's truly amazing. When he told me that story, I'm like, could you imagine that you get a letter in the mail and it's just these photos and a note from Henry Winkler of the Fonz? Like, it just, I don't know, it just makes you feel so good knowing that he's that nice of a guy, that there's someone in Hollywood. I'm sure there's a lot of people, but you just expect him to be that nice of a guy. I don't know.
Yeah, we could go on and on about it. I mean, I think most people are nice. I do think, especially if they've been blessed to be in that position. But it's the extra step where he sent the thing. Like they may go, oh, I think about that, and they don't do it. But he did it. Okay, and that's what gets you the reputation as the nicest guy in Hollywood.
That's so awesome. Yeah. Michael, this has been great. So when does the new season of The Expanse start?
December 13th, I think it goes streaming on Amazon.
Well, I'm going to be putting this episode out the day before, so that's perfect.
Oh, exciting. Thank you.
Another Friday the 13th. No, thank you. This has been great. I love just being able to talk to people. It's fun going up and down the IMDb, but just really just going through and talking about really just everything involved in the whole process. And it's so cool. Like you said, doing writing, voiceover for a trailer, you're on soaps, you voiceover work, live action. It's good to be able to do all those things, because anything that comes across your agent's desk, it's like, okay, Michael can do this because you can do it all, which is cool.
I had an agent years ago who's like, you think you can do anything? I'm like, I can. he didn't like that answer. But especially regarding voiceovers, I want to say I really enjoyed your interview. Who was it? Was the first person who was a character actor?
Oh no, it was Jerry Minor.
It was Jerry Minor. Yeah. And I was just like, yeah, this guy gets it. I was like, this is funny. So, yeah. Awesome.
Thanks. Man. No, that was cool. Like when I first started this, so I know you sent that to my buddy Jamie about his email, because I just started this process and I'm like, I don't think anybody's going to want to talk to me. So then Jerry was the first one, and I found him on Twitter, and I like tweeted at him, and he wrote like, here's my email. I'm like, is this really him? Because he only had like 2,000 followers. I'm like, is this really him? So then when he first, like I talked about in the beginning, but we were doing video, and when he first showed his face, I'm like, oh my God, I'm like, it's like a relief for it to be you. And then he said to me that I was going to put my neighbor in front of the camera to like mess with you. But no, he's such a great guy.
That's funny. Yeah, he's one of those guys like who hasn't had that role where everyone knows his name, but he's just been around for, I don't know, 25, 30 years for sure as well. Yeah.
No, Lucky Louie was like such a great role, but the show got canceled.
There you go. That's what I'm saying. There's luck. There's a lot of luck involved.
Oh, definitely. A lot of
luck involved.
And I wish you all the best of luck.
Thanks, man. Great interview.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you. Have a great day.
You too.
Michael was pretty awesome and super funny. Don't forget The Expanse on Friday the 13th, Amazon Prime. And I'll also put Michael's Instagram in the episode notes along with his IMDb so you can check out some other work that he did. Okay, so your job for next week is to watch Friday the 13th, Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan. And just want to warn you, prepare for a soggy but fun Jason. We even have a guest for the review, my good buddy Tom, who was actually born on a Friday the 13th. So, talk about some insider information. All right, so don't forget to review, rate, and share our podcast. Also, follow us on all social media at Sequels Only. Good night.